Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us on yet another live chat here on DW Africa. I'm your host, Josey Mahachie. Today we head to Zimbabwe as the country is gearing up for presidential elections in 2023. Joining us live for this discussion, we have the ruling party Zanu-PF spokesperson, Honorable Chris Mutsvangwa, and Gift Ostallos Siziba of the National Deputy of the Citizens Coalition for Change, CCC. He's the National Deputy Spokesperson who will also be joining us very shortly. For now, we have Honorable Mutsvangwa. Whilst we wait for Ostallos to join us. Good evening, Honorable. How are you doing? And thank you so much for joining us here on DW Africa.
Good evening, GW Africa.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what is happening in Zimbabwe. What is the atmosphere like as the country gears up for elections in 2023?
Oh, the general mood is very positive. People are busy looking forward to the elections in 2023. We have the general populace quite excited about the events which have been happening since the birth of the Second Republic of President E.D. Mnangagwa. The whole accent has shifted to the economic development of the country, and we are notching up successes in a variety of sectors of the national economy. Mm-hmm. Yes, we still do have challenges emanating from the adversity of the sanctions, which plagued this economy for the last 2 decades. When your major trading partners in the West become hostile, it has a knock-on effect. But we are happy that with the pro-business policies of the current administration and a flatter capital market in the world, with the arrival of new players like China, like India, like Turkey, like Russia, we are able to get the necessary capital to make our economy move forward. And we also have, of course, the policies within the government, by the new government, particularly the removal of indigenization, which was capital averse. We now have pro-business policies. So it has restored the can-do feeling among Zimbabweans. We are having a new and palpable feeling of hope by the Zimbabweans, because the economy is generally on the mend. We are one of the better performing economies in Africa. And definitely we are confident that in the next 5 to 10 years, Zimbabwe will be the fastest growing economy in the world. We are very confident of that.
But Honorable Mutsvangwa, some analysts actually oppose or would beg to differ when you say that you are having sanctions problems in Zimbabwe. They would say that Zimbabwe is full of minerals. Zimbabwe can actually take care of itself. The Zanu-PF always hides behind sanctions. What have you got to say about that?
It's a lot of nonsense. It's a lot of nonsense from those people, because I've been ambassador of Zimbabwe and I've been involved in most of the capital which has come into this country. The revival of the tobacco sector. I was ambassador of Zimbabwe in China. For years, it was the biggest contributor to the national foreign currency market of this country. Right now, I was involved in the reform of the gold sector as the chairman of the war veterans and as a former cabinet minister. And gold has come from 3 tons 5 to 6 years ago to 20 tons to 30 tons. And we are going to 60 tons. We are right now getting some of the best investors in the steel industry, the top company in the world producing steel for the global market, with 25% of the stainless steel market, and the number one in nickel is in Zimbabwe, investing on a big scale which Africa has never known. We don't listen to the nonsense of people who are analysts, but they've never brought a cent of investment into this country.
But these are citizens, Honorable Mutsvangwa, so you can't say we do not listen
it's
to
too
your
bad.
citizens,
Look.
these are the same people that will vote you in power, right? Come 2023.
No, those are the people who will not vote us into power because they are irrelevant, because they are always griping. But for the ordinary people of Zimbabwe, we've got granaries full now. For the first time, we are not going to import wheat. We have Fumbudza, which is a homegrown, climate-proof, scientific method of farming, which is lean farming, which is making sure that granaries are full in rural areas. We have young people exporting berries to the Middle East every week. 2 to freighters leave Zimbabwe with the horticulture for the Middle East, grown by Zimbabweans, young Zimbabweans who are using the internet to produce for the crops which are demanded on the world market. This is the story of Zimbabwe, not these analysts who are paid to talk nothing good about their country. We are not bothered as Zanu-PF with those analysts. We do what is on the ground, and what is on the ground is that people are confident that the economy is on the mend and they are making money, and a lot of Zimbabweans are making money. Yes, there are some people who are naturally not yet on the bandwagon of making money, but we are finding ways to have them included. The president says no one will be left behind and no place will be left behind.
Now, Honorable Mutsvangwa, in 2018, Zimbabwe got a new leader, President Mnangagwa. Without you being biased because you are Zanu-PF, looking at his first term in office, would you say he is on the right track?
He is more than on the right track. That's why the corporate boardrooms of some of the best companies in the world are responding to Zimbabwe. It's because he's on the right track. He's on the right track. That's why some of the erstwhile inimical countries are beginning to say we want to work with Zimbabwe. I've just been with the ambassador of the EU into Zimbabwe, the new one. He is stretching out. He was even at Zanu-PF headquarters. He's stretching out a hand of friendship to Zimbabwe. And as we talk, even our foreign minister has been invited to Washington by the Americans, who are still the most frigid about working with Zimbabwe. So we are making progress, and if you cannot see that progress and you still want to dwell on the past and you still want to conflate Mnangagwa with Mugabe, then we can't help you. We are on the right track, and I can assure you, with the investment which is going on in our mining sector, with investment which is going on in our agricultural sector, with the investment which we are going on and the links we are making with Mozambique, particularly in the new energy sector, we have a lot of lithium. You can't believe it. In the last 7 months, more than $600 million have been involved in mergers and acquisition on the lithium sector, and we haven't started. So we are going to be discharging a role in the new energy sector akin to what Moscow, Riyadh, or Abu Dhabi do with fossil fuels. Maputo and Harare will be major players in the new energy vehicle sector of Teslas, BYDs, Volkswagen. We will be right there because we've got the lithium. Mozambique has got the graphite. We have the graphite. The DRC Congo has got the cobalt, which passes through Zimbabwe to the coast. It's going to stop in Zimbabwe and will be invest in new energy in the parks in Zimbabwe, so that we become the main driver of the new mobility with electric vehicles. And if people don't see that when the actual businessmen are on the ground in Zimbabwe, then they can't be helped. Nothing can help those people who are negative. We'll just have to make sure that success succeeds like success.
But there is promises, a lot of promises that in 2018 Zanu-PF made, including transformation of the energy sector, health. We've seen reports about how the hospitals in Zimbabwe are dilapidated, and a lot of pregnant women are losing lives or losing their children because of the health situation in Zimbabwe. To what extent do you think the governing party has fulfilled the promises as we look into 2023?
Look, the economy was in a parlor state. It was devastated by 2 decades of the former president. And the people we are calling analysts, they are all associated with the former president. They have never tried to give the new president a credit.
But you were also part of the former government, including the current president, right?
Who told you I was part of the former president? I was only there for less than 2 years, and I was kicked out by the former government. If there's anybody who has been kicked out of government by the former government, it's me, starting in 1994 when I was kicked out of ZBC. I had to leave in 2006 when they wanted to force me to become an ambassador to Germany. And I didn't feel like I needed to take that job. I have not been, and I was instrumental, central to the removal of Mugabe from office. Nobody played a role as much as I did. That is an aberration to say that I was part of the former government. I fought against the former government, and in what we achieved against the former government as war veterans, 20 years of the CCC and the MDC could not. We removed Mugabe from power.
You
So
were,
don't try to put a badge on me about Mugabe. I will not accept that.
but the president was a vice president then with
Yes,
vice
he
president
was
of
the vice president, but he was not at the apex of power. I went for the months I was in Mugabe's cabinet. I saw how he was being heckled. I saw how he was being humiliated by the likes of Kasukwere and Joao and Jonathan. I was in that cabinet. I can tell
so
you incidents. I can write books about that. So if he wasn't, no, the fact that he was part of the government doesn't mean that he was in charge of that government. Mugabe was in charge of that government, and in the final stages of that administration, Mugabe's wife was in charge of that government through the likes of his consorts like Kasukwere and Muzembe.
mhm. So now, but then, are you saying that so the 4 years were not enough for anything to happen in terms of the energy sector or the health sector if you took over government and it was
I don't.
dilapidated?
I don't know. I don't know whether you read about Zimbabwe. In 4 years, we have had Kariba South commissioned. That's another 300 megawatts, which didn't exist before. As we talk now, anytime we're going to connect another 300 megawatts from Wange 7, brand new power station, thermal power station. And by February, the latest next year, we commission another generator for 300 megawatts at Wange that's Wange number 8. And a lot more, and this is not happened in the 20 years of Mugabe's administration. The last time there was investment in the power sector was in the 1980s. So, if you cannot see 3 generators as a big improvement, 1 hydro, 2 thermal, and more are being
But the
planned.
country is currently experiencing the worst energy crisis.
It, there are 3 aspects to that. One
Mhm.
is that the previous government for 20 years did not invest. There is a gestation period involved in the erection of thermal power stations. Usually it's 36 months. We had COVID in between when we were constructing the Wange 7 and 8. Everybody knows that we had COVID. There were delays in Europe. And then the next thing is that we also had the water levels of Kariba have gone down because of climate change. We don't have enough power with new generators on the Zimbabwe side, but there's not enough power until the rains come back. Then the third aspect is that the economy has been pumping. For the first time, we have the demand for cement on a scale this country has never recorded in history. So the connections for power, which are in queue at ZESA, they are much more than at any other time in this because the economy is pumping. So the demand is outstripping the supply because of the lag in investment which had existed over the years. Now, if we open 2 to 3 big generators of 900 megawatts in 4 years, and you're an African country, you are doing very well.
Mhm. So just talking about the economy that you just mentioned now, let's just assume America refuses to lift the sanctions on Zimbabwe or
We don't
whatever.
care. We don't care anymore.
How do you intend to solve the Zimbabwe's recurrent economic and financial crisis?
We are solving it with these things which are happening with American sanctions on board. America is not God on earth. If there is a belief in neither the Western countries God on earth, they are not. And the fact that we are succeeding in turning down the economy without them is the one which is forcing them to come back to Zimbabwe and say, let's re-engage. That's why the EU ambassador is saying we want on a new leaf with Zimbabwe, because they are seeing that we are succeeding. If we had not been succeeding, they would not be bothered. I'm telling you that the Zimbabwe is exciting the best and most competent boardrooms in the world today, particularly in the new energy sector, particularly in the steel sector. The company which is going to produce steel in Zimbabwe come this time next year, Tsingshan. They produce for every 4 teaspoons in the world, they produce one. For every three steel pipes in the world, they produce one. This is a company which is Fortune 500 number 238. It was 361 last year, but 279 last year. This year is 238. This is the level of interest which Zimbabwe is exciting in corporate boardrooms of some of the best companies in the world today. And if you miss that, it doesn't matter where you are. If the best are in Zimbabwe, you are missing the boat.
Now, let's talk about the human rights violations in Zimbabwe, particularly the persecution of opposition and party members. Has remained on Zimbabwe. A case in point is the prolonged jailing of opposition MP Job Sikala, who has spent more than 160 days in prison and being denied bail. What does this really say ahead of the 2023 elections?
Well, I may know him as an opposition politician, but definitely the law and order people of this country know him as somebody who tried to organize an uprising by driving through the townships with a retinue of armed followers trying to carry out some kind of violent upheaval in society. So you take your own pick. If you think he is an opposition leader and the police of this country who are constitutionally mandated to maintain law and order say he is a lawbreaker and somebody who disturbs the peace of the land, then I can't take your pick. I take the pick of the police, because every one of the Zimbabweans today, as they sleep tonight, they are sleeping in peace, because that police is keeping law and order in this country. So I respect the people who make this country work and work without. We have the most peaceable country in the sub-region, Zimbabwe. We don't have some of the crime which is associated with the sub-region because of the Zimbabwe police. So I give them the credit. I would rather listen to them than people who want to give badges to Zimbabwe about errant politicians who try to become later day revolutionaries by simply trying to cause mayhem. They will meet the wrath of the law.
But what does the Constitution say about bail, Honorable Mutsvangwa?
That's the Constitution is interpreted by the courts. I'm not the judge. You go to the courts, that's where it is going. So that question must be directed to the magistrate. Don't direct it to me. It must be directed to the High Court judge. Don't direct it to me. I'm not sitting presiding over the trial of BT, because they are the ones who have the prerogative to interpret the courts of the laws of this land.
Interesting. Anyway, let's move ahead. Young people who constitute a large percentage of voters are not coming out as expected to register to vote. Why is this so, and what could be done to motivate them?
Oh, it's a burning question. No, that one we are very much worried about it. We are not worried, concerned about it. We would want as much as possible the young people to be part of the democratic processes of this country. And you got to remember that Zimbabwe's population, 60 to 70% is rural. So a lot of the young people are actually in rural areas, which are also the stronghold of Zanu-PF. So we are worried. We are going full out to make sure that we canvass. We want them to register to vote. There are issues, where the economy was in comatose for the 2 decades of the last of the First Republic. It created a disinterest in politics, and we have to restore the people's confidence in the political processes of this country. So it is something which we accept. We want to work hard on it, but the best way to work hard on it is to make sure that the economy does well, it delivers what the people want, it restores confidence to the people. Then they can say, if my vote is cast, it can change my life. This is where we want to go. I think the best thing which the president has done is to make sure that the people of Zimbabwe, especially young people, begin to participate in the economy. You will realize that out of the 30 to 40 tons marginal increase in gold production, 2/3 of that is coming from young people. Yes, it's a young industry. It has imperfections. It has other issues to do with EMA. It has to do with the high accident value, but it's a young industry. But the main thing is that it has given an avenue of the youth to go and dig for minerals, just like their ancestors who built Mapungubwe, Great Zimbabwe, Danamombe, Kami did for many years digging gold. So we have a whole legion of young people who are involved in gold mining. This is participating in their economy because we restored the resource of gold to the people of Zimbabwe, to the young people, so that they can partake in the economy.
Mm-hmm. I see a lot of comments, people asking where Ostallos Siziba is. Unfortunately, I think he's failing to connect through to this live. But since Honorable Mutsvangwa is here, we just decided to continue and find out just from his side in terms of Zanu-PF. Now, back to you, Honorable Mutsvangwa. Zimbabwe independence was founded on the country's liberation struggle. And this is a fact. I mean, you are a war veteran. But many citizens feel the ruling party has failed to move from the liberation struggle rhetoric and develop the country in the past 42 years. What would you say to this? Are citizens justified?
They are arbitrary. That's an arbitrary statement. We go into the elections every 5 years. Remember, we are the first ever liberation movement in modern times, which was on the verge of military victory. I know we were on the verge of victory because I took part in that war. We allowed ourselves to lay down the arms and go into assembly points and allow the ballot to decide the future of the country. We didn't go from bullet to office. We went from ballot to office. So nobody can teach us about democracy, because we know we fought for it. And when it came to the litmus test of people having to choose who they want, we quietened our guns and we allowed it. So we don't accept that anybody can teach Zimbabwe about democracy. And for those, because of that tradition of sticking to the interests of the people of Zimbabwe, Zanu-PF has always been winning. Yes, there were challenges during the Second Republic because there was a complicity by the G40s and Mugabe to try to create conditions where the revolution aborts. They wanted the fetus of the revolution to abort, but we reversed that as war veterans. We took the lead in 2017, and I was the chairman of those war veterans. I know what went on back to trying to restore the trust and confidence, which made the people of Zimbabwe decide to sacrifice their only lives to say we'll be free under the auspices of Zanu-PF during the liberation struggle. So if people can democratically choose to die for their own country, it means they understand democracy better than anybody who is trying to teach them from the country where you are now, Germany, or from the countries like the UK or America. We taught democracy. We learned democracy the hard way in Zimbabwe. So we don't want to be chosen to be taught by the people who are ascribing as analysts, all of them paid by foreigners to denigrate their own home country.
These are just citizens, ordinary citizens, not
You
analysts.
you have never been voted yourself.
We are on Facebook. On social media, we see what your citizens say on social media platforms.
Zimbabwe, people don't vote from Facebook. People vote with their hands. I'm the one who introduced the internet backbone into Zimbabwe, the first one. So I know about the social media. That's my first degree. Don't tell me that what the Facebook says is what Zimbabwean people think. It's not. What people in Zimbabwe think is what Zanu-PF does to them to deliver new means of farming like Fumbudza, to deliver better roads, which we are doing, to deliver new investments, which will make us the largest steel producer on the African continent. These are the things which matter to the people of Zimbabwe, to make us a leading country in the new energy vehicle sector, because we're a lot of lithium. We are getting investment in lithium and with top-class companies. These are the things which matter to the Zimbabwe people, not what Facebook does, not what WhatsApp does with their algorithms, which they are floating and claiming that is the thinking of Zimbabwe. My degrees in management information systems, so I know what I'm talking about.
And thanks to Facebook right now, you're actually addressing some of your citizens who are watching us right now, Honorable.
And thanks to the fact that I introduced the internet when everybody in Zimbabwe didn't know what it was all about. I'm the one I negotiated with Cisco in 1999 to bring the first national backbone of internet on the African continent. I did that. So you're in territory which I am very much familiar with.
Now, there's been disputes regarding election results in Zimbabwe. I'm sure this you are aware of. Even to this day, opposition leader Nelson Chamisa claims President Mnangagwa stole the election. What does Zimbabwe need to ensure a free and fair election come 2023?
Chamisa will always not have a free and fair election as long as he doesn't win. So we can't be bothered by him, because as long as not the president, an election is not free and fair. So maybe if he commits himself to accepting the results of elections, then maybe and then leaves to his word that when an election outcome is decided, he accepts it. Then we can have a universal acceptance. But if you mean that he should veto elections where 14 million Zimbabweans have decided and is unhappy with it, then we can't help it. You can always go in and enjoy the support of those in the West who feel that as long as Chamisa has not won an election, then there is no free and fair election. And those days are getting numbered. With Britain out of the EU, with the EU reaching out to Zimbabwe, with the Americans even now starting to rethink that we need to go into and do business in Zimbabwe because we are losing out. I don't know how long he will go with his clamoring for support and clamoring to those Western countries which had thought they can recolonize Zimbabwe. It will not happen. Those who say no elections in Zimbabwe, they do worse with other countries which don't even hold elections, but they don't talk about them as much as Zimbabwe. We have never put Scotland on the agenda of the Zimbabwe Parliament. We have never put Wales on the agenda of Zimbabwe Parliament, but we have got some loony House of Lords people in London talking about Zimbabwe as if it was Wales or Scotland. These are mad politicians from outside the country. We can't be bothered. We know what we did to those who represented them during the end of the colonial era. So we know who our enemies are, and we are not bothered with detractors and those who will never wish well for our country.
But the other thing is it has been a challenge for young people to be elected or appointed in key leadership positions like MPs or ministers. This is not only a Zimbabwean problem, but Africa-wide. As someone who's been in this for a long time in this game, what will it take for young people to take up positions of influence?
Look, when we fought, some of them were as young as 14, 12. I was 19. That means there was a lot of patriotic fervor, which made us do what we did, the Soweto generation, the Samora Machel generation. So we know what can excite young people to become part of their politics, because I went through that. And out of the 5 I went to war with, probably only 2 came back, and the other, they came back with wounds or without their ears. So this is something which I've experienced before. There are challenges which have cropped up. No country develops in a linear fashion. We made mistakes, in the First Republic, which we corrected in 2017. It is taking us time to build back the trust by carrying out economic policies, because people's concern is prosperity. You don't offer your only one life to fight for independence unless you are assured that your sacrifice will give prosperity to your country. So if we can address the prosperity gap by making Africa feel that it can provide for its population, the young people will inevitably take an interest in politics. So we have an obligation to work as Africans, to work as Zimbabweans, that we restore prosperity as the only goal for politics. Then the population will be engaged, and many young people will find themselves into politics because they can see a better future for themselves in politics. So yes, it is a challenge, but there is a new hope in Africa. It is the continent of hope. We have the youngest population. We have, in the case of Zimbabwe, we have the most educated population on the African continent. Look at the template of the Zimbabwean who has gone abroad to look for businessmen to give him jobs in Dubai, in South Africa, in Australia. They do well in those countries. Now, if they are a template, if they are a symbol of our population, imagine if money comes into Zimbabwe by business people I'm talking about, and they are at home, and those who are in the diaspora come back with their skills, they link up with those at home who are hardworking, this country will do well. Naturally, this will mean many young people get more engaged in politics. Already there is a feeling of can-do among Zimbabweans. You look at the diaspora, the amount of building which they are now investing back home. We have never consumed cement to the quantities we are doing right now in the whole history of this country for the past 147 years. This is something good. This is a measure of young couples saying we can go back home and make a living. We have the white diaspora. which went in the 70s, running away from Ian Smith, and those who ran away from independence. Now they are coming back. They are all the northern suburbs of Zimbabwe. Their houses being demolished. They are being replaced by 8 to 10 detached houses or even upstairs houses. This is you go to Borodale on a Saturday. You think you're in North London with white population, which had gone to Australia, to New Zealand, to Canada, coming back home. This is a measure of the confidence which Zimbabweans are showing back in their own country. There is a new can-do spirit. I don't know where these who continuously gripe about the government, I don't know where they come from. We see the reality every day. People are happy. The amount of cars on the road, the amount of everybody Zimbabwean has got cash. We now even don't worry about the US dollar anymore because everybody is earning it. So this is a new Zimbabwe. It's a new Zimbabwe which the Second Republic has brought about, which President Mnangagwa works day and night to make sure that he delivers prosperity to the Zimbabwe people.
It's unfortunate the opposition guy could not join us, just for us to also understand, because we are not on ground. But before I let you,
don't worry, you would probably have been waffling a lot of things which are irrelevant to the people of Zimbabwe.
Before I let you go, I just want to ask from you. I mean, obviously, you know that us in the diaspora are really contributing to the economy in terms of remittances. But are we allowed to vote this time around according to the constitution?
Yes, you are allowed to vote. Come back home and vote.
From the diaspora. From the diaspora.
Yes.
Voting from here.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to vote from there, then there would be all sorts of logistical provisions, to make it. And I don't know whether, that is the most burning issue. I mean, if people who are patriotic who want to come and vote, you come back home. If you fly back home, you will vote. But I don't know how you expect to come and put a voting booth in Germany.
Oh, it's possible. I mean, voting should be done everywhere. It's called diaspora voting. It is possible.
I'm not sure how many countries actually do that, and I don't know. Maybe we need to look at it and then to tweak our constitution accordingly. So a law will need to be passed by Parliament, which incidentally, of course, the two parties wrote the constitution which existed today. The two parties, they wrote the constitution which exists today, and the two parties are also in Parliament. So I think, if there is that issue, you put it to the test of Parliament, and maybe we put it to the test of the referendum to say we want to go and open booths in Germany for the diaspora. And then maybe we also need to allow those governments to say we set up political parties in their own countries to come and campaign in their political parties. I'm not sure whether the Germans and the British will be happy that Zanu-PF has got a political party registered in the UK to campaign in the diaspora in the UK. You see, I'm a diplomat. I know these issues a lot more than the talk which goes on. There's a lot which may be involved in what you are trying to suggest, just merely from diplomatic aspects, but also there are logistical issues aside from the constitutional issues which I'm talking about within Zimbabwe. The laws and the regulations have to be passed with Parliament. That's where the electoral rules are made.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but before I let you go, I was also going to ask the opposition the same question. Why should the citizens of Zimbabwe vote Zanu-PF in 2023?
Two things. Zanu-PF created the modern Zimbabwean state. And for 6 decades, it has kept its compact with the Zimbabwean people. It has defended them through thick and thin. It has restored their lands which were stolen. It is now giving even young people a chance to enjoy the minerals which this country belonged to. And with the new president, E.D. Mnangagwa, we are promoting pro-business policies which are engendering growth across the economy. There is a restoration of prosperity. So we are now fulfilling what the generation which fought desired when they decided to sacrifice their life. So you vote for Zanu-PF. You can't vote for a party which promotes sanctions. You can't vote for a party which says we don't accept electoral outcomes as long as we are winning. We are not the winners. You can't vote for a party which thinks that governance is only national, not local. All the cities are in total decay. For 2 decades, they were being run by MDC councillors. There's rotten garbage everywhere. Roads turn into rivulets when the tropical storms councillors arrive, by incompetent councillors from the MDC. Investment starts at local government level. I've never seen Chamisa with a businessman trying to invest in the cities where his cabinet councillors run. Townhouse has nothing to do with the promotion of business in this country. How do you vote for people in national governance when they can't even run local councils, when they can run, they cannot even run local towns? They are incompetent, they don't know their job, they don't deserve to be at the national seat of power. So vote for Zanu-PF.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mutsvangwa, for joining us today on DW Africa. Obviously, we'll keep track on the happenings in Zimbabwe as the country gears up for elections in 2023. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Make sure that Ostallos comes next time. I don't want to debate alone.
You will definitely join us, and we'll have you back on the same platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
There you go, Africa. I've been speaking to Honorable Chris Mutsvangwa all the way from Zimbabwe. He is the spokesperson of the ruling party Zanu-PF. Unfortunately, the opposition deputy spokesperson Ostallos Siziba could not connect, or maybe could not join us this evening. He had technical issues, but definitely we'll have Honorable Mutsvangwa and Ostallos Siziba back again for a debate as we are looking at elections that are coming up in Zimbabwe in 2023. As always, I'm your host, Josey Mahachie. Until next time, it's a good evening.